Hey everyone. In February, I visited Los Angeles for the first time. That's where I met the Aetherius Society Reverend Oscar Leon. Anyway, it goes without saying that the people there were really interesting, but the drivers were extra aggressive too, and that's just the way I like them. So I decided to contact the nice people over at Melrose Driving School in Hollywood. They've been around for 30 years, and they're right in the middle of the Hollywood action, so you know there's potential there. I was hoping they'd put me in touch with an instructor with some interesting stories about driving adventures. And let's be honest, someone who's met some celebrities in what could be a stressful driving situation. So they were super cool, and they let me talk with Josh Mendoza. He's super chill and sounds super professional too, which is good for first-time drivers in the absolute mayhem of Los Angeles traffic. So let's jump right into the conversation with Josh.
I just finished a driving lesson with this one lady who was kind of like a housekeeper because she wanted to get her license as soon as possible. So I dropped her off, and I was kind of moving the car around in her neighborhood, and I just happened to kind of be looking at my rearview mirror, and I was noticing that I kind of saw someone familiar behind me, and then I kind of turned my head around and I realized, oh wait, that's Harrison Ford. It's like he's right there, like maybe 10 feet from my car, just standing there because he was talking to somebody outside of his house.
So I guess the housekeeper that was Harrison Ford's housekeeper?
No, it was some housekeeper for another person that was living, I think, maybe next door to Harrison Ford. So he just happened to be outside talking with a friend of his or somebody, and I was just seeing Harrison Ford there, and I'm trying to not to hyperventilate because that's Harrison Ford. It's like I grew up watching Star Wars or Indiana Jones. It's that's one of my favorite actors of all time.
You got to resist the urge to jump out of the car.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was debating it the entire time. I'm thinking the entire time I'm thinking, is he gonna get kind of surly if I kind of approach him and even if it's just 10 seconds, kind of shaking his hand or something? Should I, more often than not, I just decide just not to interfere, just not do anything. I'll just be like, okay, well, I just saw Harrison Ford or whomever. But yeah, I kind of figured, they don't want to be bothered by some random guy, in a driving school car just saying hello.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably just out saying, okay, I don't know, stop throwing your Frisbee in my backyard or something like that. And,
right.
In his sweatpants and his sneakers, and it's then you pop out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's oh, great, I don't need this now.
Yeah, their dog pooped on my doorstep again. And, now
right.
This guy.
Right, exactly. The cool thing about the driving school, at least where we're located, is that it's been around for almost 30 years, and a lot of, let's say, actors or maybe musicians or people like that, they've either used the driving school or either for themselves or for their children. It's not that uncommon where if I look at my schedule, if I look at another instructor's schedule, students they run a half of the week, that there's a name that I instantly recognize. I'm like, oh, I know that person. They're from that TV show or I know that musician or something. So it's always kind of interesting whenever you see a name and you kind of instantly recognize it. I'm like, oh wow, okay, I'm actually going to be working with this so and so or this musician. So it's kind of a nice perk.
Kiernan Shipka? You might have.
Yeah, if people don't recognize the name, she kind of played Sally Draper, who was Don Draper's daughter on the TV show Mad Men. She was actually really cool. She was very attentive. She paid attention to everything. We had great conversations. So she absolutely was a model student. So there has to be no complaints with her.
She gets a pass.
Yeah. She was taking driving lessons here in LA, but she was actually going to take her drive test in Florida.
Okay.
Which is interesting. So because I wasn't sure if the rules of the road were the same in Florida as it is in California, but it totally was. And so she just kind of needed to know, what the appropriate way it is to drive, so that way she could pass her driving test in Florida, which she ended up doing.
Oh, that's good. So that's a bonus. That's plus. And then you also had Nora Arnezeder. Oh my God, sorry, I screwed the last name up. You see, I don't really watch movies. How do you pronounce her name?
It's Arnezeder, I believe. Yeah.
So Nora Arnezeder.
She's on that TV show that's on Amazon. I think it's Mozart in the Jungle. I believe. She was also a great student, a little more nervous than other people that I've worked with, but it was great to kind of see her anxiety disappear, and as the more lessons that we had, because then I could see her confidence kind of grow with like each driving lesson that we had. Driving here in Los Angeles now, it's a whole different beast. It's it's more drivers. It's especially in Hollywood, like kind of narrower streets, more congested. So it's kind of just getting used to a whole different manner of driving here.
Dove Cameron as well.
Yeah, she was great too. It's kind of interesting because when I would meet up with her for lessons, it was kind of like straight out of like the studio where she would do her show. So it was she'd do her show, and then after the show was done, like she would have her driving lesson, and it was just driving around the city. And so I actually went along with her for her drive test, because we kind of like our driving school does this service where people can kind of rent our cars if they don't have a car available, so that they can take the driving test in the driving school car. So she had opted to do that with us. So I was kind of like the one that tagged along with her and kind of reviewing all the rules of the road, getting her to practice a little bit around the area before she took the driving test. So it was really great to kind of see her pass. I was kind of like a little nervous though. I always seem to get a little bit nervous with people who I've worked with for a while, because whenever I'm with them with a driving test, I'm like, I sometimes kind of second guess myself, like, oh, did I help them understand this rule correctly, or
Right.
this maneuver correctly? So
you're kind of being tested too, in a way.
Yeah, in a sense, exactly right. So it's like, man, I really hope that I don't get a situation where if the person fails, they're like, oh, well, you never told me about this, or you never told me about that. So that's why I'm always kind of like thinking, okay, did I do this? Did I say this correctly? Did I understand this correctly? Because it's like, I know for a fact that, I know how driving tests work. I know I 100% have not missed anything. So, but I always end up kind of second guessing myself either way.
Yeah, and could you imagine if like her production company came along and said, "Oh man, Dove really needed that driver's license. We're gonna do some shots in, I don't know, in the country or something, and she needs to be able to drive to location daily." Blah blah blah. I don't know. I'm just making things up. I'm sure they probably could have gotten her a lift, but
yeah, but yeah, no, totally, yeah. So there's that too, especially for somebody who's like, they need that driving lessons so they can actually go to, drive for some particular like shoot or something. It's like, it's kind of like a little bit extra pressure on me now. It's like, okay, well, man, really better make sure that I've done everything correctly. That kind of covered every, possible thing that they need to know.
And I also have here that Dan Aykroyd's daughters. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's because he has twin daughters, and so I myself and then another instructor, we tagged along with them because they wanted to do the same thing as Dove did, where they wanted to use the driving school car, and so we picked them up from their house, and every time that I would pick them up from their house or drop them off at their house, I was really hoping I would meet Dan Aykroyd, because it's Dan Aykroyd. It's comedy legend. Like, that's one of the guys that I kind of grew up watching, like when he was on Ghostbusters or on Saturday Night Live or something. So, but yeah, so no dice. Never did get a chance to bump into him. But yeah, his daughter's very very sweet girls. They've totally like the opposite of what you would think of, like, kind of like stuck up children or whatever. That's like totally not the case with them. They're actually very sweet. They're kind of, again, same thing, model students. And so, first time out for them, they both passed. So they were pretty excited about that. It was really cool.
You also gave lessons to J.J. Abrams' daughter, and as well Phil Rosenthal. So J.J. Abrams, is everybody knows that's Star Trek, and then Phil Rosenthal. I mean, that's Everybody Loves Raymond. And again, two people that, I mean, it's a thrill to meet their daughters, I'm sure. But I mean, if I were you, I'd be like, oh, come on. If I stay here, he can come out and pick up his paper or something. I'll see him.
Well, yeah, especially with J.J. Abrams' case, where it's like, it's J.J. Abrams. It's, that guy, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So it's like, he just did Star Wars right now. So, it would have been really amazing. But no, usually they kind of just, they're either not at home or they're out at, out from a different part of the country or something, or international. So yeah, it's like no such luck.
I mean, when you're picking up some of these people, I mean, do you go pick these people up, or do they, I don't know, meet you at a bus stop or something? I mean,
yeah, it varies. For the most part, it's picking them up at their house. So, it's always kind of confidential anyway. It's not like they kind of know that we're not going to like blab about, oh my God, well, this person lives in like this part of LA, like you should totally check it out. Like they're not going to like, realize it like on TMZ or something that, oh, well, we found like Dan Aykroyd's place or something. Yeah, but typically it's in their, their house, or if they're, if they're working somewhere, or if they were shopping somewhere, they can always let us know where they want to be picked up instead, so we can start the lesson there. So it's totally up to them.
I can just picture it like, you're at the front gate, you buzz, oh, it's the driving school, and then you drive in and, they come out with some sort of handler or something. I don't know. I got all kinds of pictures in my mind, but I mean,
yeah. Yeah, but no, for the most part, it's not like that. I mean, unless it was someone like super high profile,
like Rihanna or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. Then it's like, oh, okay, understandable. But no, it's like they kind of know that, it's just a driving school, and like, it doesn't really matter, like, if they show up at their house or something. So they always kind of come out their front door, kind of introduce themselves, which is always pretty cool.
Hey, this is Jacob Haller. In my podcast, Tell Me About Your Song, I call up all kinds of songwriters, jazz, rock, folk, electronica, whatever, and all levels of experience from just starting out to established national acts, and I ask them to talk about a song they wrote for about 20 minutes. So if you're interested in hearing creative folks talk about what they do, then check it out at tellmeaboutyoursong.com. Thanks.
Hey Fred, check it out. West Texas is in the national news. It says here in the Huffington Post, someone from our town said, oh, God damn it.
Awesome. Why do you do this to yourself?
I don't know. Welcome to the Mexi Bro Movie Show, where we use our love of terrible movies
Hell yeah.
to justify our positive outlook of growing up in West Texas.
Well, one of us anyway.
Nice. Each month on the Mexi Bro Movie Show, discover a terrible movie that you can share with you and yours.
Movie reviews and pop culture discussions.
Live music performances and interviews.
Hey, don't forget about the hot Mexican minute with Uncle Rob, puto. It'll be the best minute of your life.
Check us out on iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts. And remember to live,
love,
and papas.
And papas. I got your papas right here, puto.
Hello, listeners. My name is Jeff Kowalski, and I'm the host of Creepypodsta, the Creepypasta podcast. It's a podcast where I invite two special guests to talk about virally distributed horror stories from around the far, dark corners of the internet. Are these stories true? Probably not. Listen to us at weaponizedlanguage.com or funtimes.online.
Did you join the school right out of high school, or like, did you have any gigs before the school?
I had worked a couple years before working at Melrose. I had actually worked for about 5 years at an elementary school that's like here in Los Angeles. So it was basically like as a teacher's assistant. There were sometimes as part of that job, it would involve me kind of working with students, kind of like either one-on-one or maybe in groups of 4 or 5, kind of like smaller groups, and maybe just kind of reinforcing whatever it is that the teacher was teaching beforehand. And so, I kind of got a good sense of what works, what doesn't work when you're trying to teach younger people. Kind of like also, it's not that different teaching, younger children, like, maybe 6 or 7 year olds, and also, teaching 15 or 16-year-olds how to drive. There's, a couple things are a little bit different, but not a lot. I kind of already had a good sense of how to, explain things and how to kind of make it interesting, not make it seem pretty dull.
Did you ever run into some kind of like really interesting people who had some quirky habits, let's say?
Yeah, it's something that I pretty much have to deal with on a monthly basis. The one person that always pops into my head, I think it's just because she was one of like my first kind of clients that I was working with when I first started, was this one lady who gosh, she must have been maybe in her 40s perhaps, where she was, she wanted to learn how to drive so that she could get her driver's license as soon as possible. And so this lady, whenever I would meet up with her, she would always dress pretty much the same way. She was basically dressed in all purple, like, purple hat, purple blouse, purple shoes, the whole deal. She even wore like these like purple gloves that you kind of wear, when it's cold. It was kind of bizarre because whenever I would, work with her, it was like during the middle of like summer, so it was kind of weird. But yeah, so she, it was kind of night and day with her in the sense that with her, in regards to her driving lesson, the first half of the driving lesson went really well. She was very attentive. She paid attention to everything I was saying. She was doing everything really well. And then like the second half, it was just like somebody had turned on the switch. Like she had changed personality. Like she kind of wanted to do things on her own, or she wanted kind of to go drive places, on her own and kind of without my guidance. And I was just only supposed to kind of let her know if she was messing up on something. So, yeah, she was the first person that always kind of pops into my head whenever someone always asks me a question about, whether I've worked with anybody who's kind of like a little quirky or a little odd.
So she are you telling me that she actually would decide to drive somewhere other than she would just sort of decide that she wanted to drive to like an In-N-Out burger or something, or?
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre because the one lesson that I worked with her, the last lesson I worked with her was during the second hour, she wanted to pick up, this lunch that she had ordered at a market, which was near 3rd and Fairfax, which is like near the Grove, which is like the very famous Grove like shopping center there. And traffic there is horrendous, no matter the time of day, no matter what day of the week it is. It's always a mess. So we went there so that she could pick up her food. It took maybe 20 minutes for her to pick up her food, and then after that, she said that she needed to be dropped off at like this like area where like you kind of like a storage area, where it's our warehouse. And so she would always end the lesson there, but it was basically like during that second half of that lesson, she was just kind of, she already had like her route planned, where she wanted to go. So, it was kind of like, she kind of took it out of my hands a little bit.
So basically you got turned into almost an Uber service.
Pretty much, exactly. Yeah. Some lessons that we have in the morning, I usually don't work that early in the morning, but my first lesson maybe was around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. If it's like on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, some kids come straight from out of bed and then into the car to learn how to drive. So, they just show up in pajamas or they're kind of, bed hair or whatever, and they're there. Some kids, maybe they were out with their friends earlier, or they were just hanging out around the house, and maybe there's nothing to eat around the house. So maybe in the middle of a driving lesson, they kind of really get the urge to kind of go to fast food place, kind of go through the drive-through, and order something, and then it's like a 10-minute break in between lessons, so they can just go ahead and just kind of eat that food that they need to kind of energize again.
That could be good for you, I guess, if they offer to buy you the free lunch. But I mean, in a sense, you're doing everybody a favor, because the last thing you want is to be with some person with low blood sugar trying to learn how to drive.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's going to happen before, in the sense that, some kids just are, either because they've had a lot of work, like schoolwork, or, they just come back from, some like club that they're part of, like a box club or something. And so when they're doing a driving lesson in the afternoon, let's say, they just are tired, just dead tired. And so I can already kind of get the sense within like the first 10 minutes or so of the driving lesson whether they're going to have the energy to actually drive around for a couple of hours. And so if they're really tired, I'm like, yeah, this is dangerous.
Wow. I mean, so this is a couple of hours. I mean, back in my day, I don't remember it being that long. That's pretty intense, I mean, after that, you really get a good feeling you're going to get a good feeling for driving after that couple of hours.
Yeah, totally. What I do with my lessons usually is that, I kind of mix it up a little bit. I mean, it's not like we're driving in traffic for like an hour straight or anything. I kind of, have them drive around in major streets for a little bit, and then residential streets for a little bit again. And then I always take the time to kind of like pull over somewhere in a residential street, let's say, and then just to kind of talk with the student and ask them if they have any questions on anything, if they're still, confused about certain laws or rules or anything. So It's not like I have them just driving for like 2 hours straight, which, because I know that amount of attention that you have to put mentally into driving can be pretty exhausting.
We leased a car, and I went to the dealership, and I asked the car guy, I'm like, so you go on these test drives, do you ever have any crazy situations? And he told me that he had an old lady just the week before, and she had one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake the whole time.
Right. Yeah. There's some people, I guess, who kind of drive in that manner where they just use the 2 feet, even though I always tell them in the beginning, you really should just be using your right foot to accelerate and to brake. But some people feel that using the 2 feet is kind of
more
best way
efficient
for them to handle the car. Yeah, right, exactly. And so I would tell them, well, it's like, sooner or later down the line, you're bound to kind of get your wires crossed as far as that's how your brain works, and then you might think you're pressing on the brake, but then you're pressing on the gas pedal, and then that it can be a pretty messy situation. But yeah, so I mean, there's been a few kind of eccentric drivers, perhaps, that I worked with. I think one person I always think of also is this one kind of elderly man who was actually like a doctor, like this very kind of respected doctor near who kind of teaches classes at UCLA, and he needed to retake his driving tests again, and so he was just kind of making mistakes constantly, left and right, within the hour that we were driving. It was just him not, being able to kind of retain info, or just him just kind of maybe spacing out. But it was just it was really difficult to try to get him to understand that, all the mistakes that he was going to make, they will most definitely fail him if he were to take his driving test.
Do you have your own wheel? Do you have your own wheel and brake pedal at least?
No. Well, in at least here in California, if you're at driving school, the 2 things you absolutely need to have are the brake pedal and a rear view mirror on your side. So my car, usually the car that I drive around, have those 2 things. Plus, I also have a gas pedal in case, let's say, if I'm with a student and we're on the freeway, and
right.
It's just it's 65 miles per hour, let's say, and they're driving 48. I'm just trying to get them to kind of help them push it up a little bit more. And I don't use that gas pedal that often. They kind of already get a good sense of how fast you're supposed to go. So more often than not, I'm always just kind of using the brake if I feel that maybe they're making a turn too fast, or if they're not going to make the stop on time. So just kind of helping them out for a little bit.
Have you ever had to go and grab the wheel?
Oh yeah. That's a pretty common maneuver that I have to make. Usually, if that ever happens, it tends to be for the first driving lesson with a student. Whether usually if it's somebody who's never driven before, and they're trying to get a feel for how they're supposed to move the wheel when they want to make a turn, or if they're trying to keep the car straight when they're steering the vehicle. And so if I kind of see if they're going to make their turn too short or too wide, then it's pretty common of me to kind of grab the wheel and kind of guide them for a little bit.
If I were in the lesson, I would be I'd be glad that the instructor has ultimate control, right? Because when you're scared, when you're freaked out, I know that when I was first learning how to drive as an adult, the instructor might say, stop. But I was so freaked out or in my space or what have you, right, that it takes a few seconds for that to register.
Yeah, exactly. And so usually if I notice that, my student's going to make a mistake, they're going to make the turn too short, or they're going to kind of get too close to the car that's in front of them, I kind of just, my reaction time is pretty quick, where I can just put my right foot on the brake, stop immediately. And so, so going back to what you said about kind of them having the confidence in that the instructor can, help, stop them or grab the wheel. It kind of also helps if your instructor's pretty calm. It really kind of doesn't feel that great if you're a student, and then you have your instructor who kind of will also freak out as well. That kind of adds a lot of stress. If
your instructor's got white knuckles, or if he's holding on hard to the oh shit handle on the side of the door, I was right. Starts saying Hail Marys or something.
Yeah, so it's kind of important to definitely, even if, but it's not that often, but I mean, if I do feel that oh my gosh, this person is driving way too fast, or this person is swearing way too much or something, it's kind of important that they also kind of not show it, that kind of keep a cool demeanor, and that way whatever mistake that they're making, they know that I'm just going to I can always just kind of pull over and talk to them calmly about, what they should do next time, how to avoid that mistake. So even if I'm feeling like a little freaked out or something, that's kind of important that I also kind of keep a cool demeanor and not show that anxiety or whatever that I may be feeling at that point.
Have you ever ended up on the sidewalk or on or jumped a curb or anything crazy like that?
No, there have been some few close calls though, with people where they've kind of maybe made the turn pretty well, and then all of a sudden they before they straighten the wheel out after a turn, they tend to put too much pressure on the gas pedal, so then the car kind of heads for the curb. So usually my reaction time is really quick, so I'm able to kind of put my foot on the brake and stop them because my brake always overrides theirs.
Okay.
So so I know that I'm always usually in control of the vehicle if I need to be. But yeah, so no, nothing. Thankfully, nothing where like crash into a curb or gone to the sidewalk. But that possibility is definitely always there. Like being a driving instructor here in Los Angeles, it's kind of interesting in the sense that you're kind of working with people who are just regular people. You're also kind of working with people who are not regular. They're kind of a big deal. But at the same time, you kind of are driving in an area where it's it's just any city that it's just like Los Angeles, just like any other kind of urban area. But I don't know. It's kind of weird to describe it. It's just kind of interesting how there's there's a duality of the city, and that kind of comes through also with being a driving instructor, where it's like, you kind of have to teach them how to drive a certain way, but at the same time, it's not how people drive in Los Angeles, So it's kind of getting people when I'm doing like driving lessons with them. It's just trying to get them to understand that, hey, this is sort of like a launch point. Like you kind of know how to drive, all the rules of the road, but now it's kind of like, here's a reality check. Here's driving in Los Angeles now. So good luck. Good luck dealing with like people who will cut you off or people who kind of run red lights or something. So yeah, I've always found that to be pretty interesting.
You've learned well, Grasshopper. Now I need to set you free into the world.
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. It's like, especially with teenagers, it's like, okay, I taught them well. They know everything. It's everything's great, and now they're going to be driving with a bunch of like people. Like I don't know, people who've driven in Los Angeles for 30 years, 40 years. They're the grizzled veterans, and they're just like some there's some poor like small bird that now has to be out there on their own. It's kind of interesting for sure.
Hey Josh, thanks so much for sharing your stories today.
No problem. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Well, that's about all for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember, you can always listen to all the episodes over at shareaslicepodcast.com. And if you find yourself in LA and need to brush up on your driving skills or need to take a driver's test, you can check out Melrose Driving School over at melrosedrivingschool.com. If you're lucky, you'll get Josh. Please consider supporting the show by heading over to iTunes and leaving a review or a 5-star rating. You can get there super easy by clicking on the iTunes link over at shareaslicepodcast.com. It really helps. Also, if you think you're interesting enough to be on the show, or you know someone who is, please contact me on the contact page over at shareaslicepodcast.com/contact. All the music for the podcast is by Chromatics Music. KROMATIKS. And it's used with permission. You can find them over at SoundCloud. Links to the podcast mentioned in the mid-show adverts can be found in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you'll be back next week.